Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining me this morning. It is going to be an amazing day. It's Tuesday, 8/6/2019. Every morning we get together and we talk about a subject, something that we're hoping can kind of get some fire in your cup, get you fired up for the day. Again, for those of you that have been following my morning mindsets for a little while, I usually get into the office about 4 a.m. So I have about 2 or 3 hours, before I actually get on to the morning mindset. But this is really the time before I start communicating and start getting on the phone and dealing with customers, dealing with some of my sales reps and the business models that we have. So I like to kind of get my juices going, stand up, walk around a little bit, talk to you guys a little bit, and cover some good subject matter. So please get a pen, get out a notebook, and take some good notes. Shake it off a little bit, jump up and down. Let's go ahead and get this day started. So my morning mindset subject this morning is take as many steps every day as possible, but always fire directives in sequence. So what does that mean? So there are many things that you may be doing in your business or in your sales track. And for us here, we have, I couldn't even count the number of different sequences that are in place between development work, between design work, content development work, sales track training, setting things up and launching things that we have with our company and with our companies that we're working with. And this is a very important point. So even though there are many reasons to always work on as much of the projects that you're working on every day, and even set time aside on a daily basis for all of them, even if 10 minutes here, 30, maybe an hour, 30 minutes, maybe an hour on some other things, because you always want to be moving forward on all the things that you're doing. It's very important that you fire directives in sequence. So what a directive is it's an actual action item, right? So for example, if other people are involved in anything that you're working on, you want to be careful not to bring them on conference calls, get them into meetings, and just start firing off everything that you would like to see happen specifically. Keep your information, well, I'm not going to say private, but keep it documented properly so that you personally understand what has to happen. Feed the information to the individuals that you're working with that allows them to take massive action on things in a much more controlled fashion where you can calculate that more specifically in good time. All right, for example, an impossible thing for me to do in this directive, but I'm going to kind of give this example as a counter to it, is we just got a tremendous amount of traction with our Consult for Health opportunity. And I took 2 of my top administrators that work with me in our joint ventures, and I put them onto that program yesterday. And there was a ton of videos that I made for them. I created a tremendous amount of documentation over the weekend so that they could really, really hustle it up and get started. Well, they started that yesterday. Now, I gave them so much information that I know absorbing that information, taking the sequence steps to do the things required from the information is literally going to take them 2 to 3 weeks. Now, that as someone in charge of a project or developing a track forward in something specifically isn't the best way to do it. Now, I didn't have a choice yesterday. I had to do it. And so the reality is they've got track to move forward consistently for several days. Problem, okay, or the challenge is that me being the orchestrator of the things that needed to get done, I know the things better than they do, even though I was very thorough in what I created for them to research. Now, I didn't have a choice again in this manner, and sometimes you don't. So what will happen over the next 2 to 3 weeks is they will take and organize the things that have to be done for Consult for Health in order, specifically based off of deadlines, timelines, conversations that have to have with certain people in order to trigger certain things to happen. And I trust these 2 implicitly, and so I'm going to allow that process to take measure. But they've also been working with me for several years, and especially if you're working with new people, or you're, for example, say you're a sales manager and you're bringing in other additional sales people to get into some of the programs that you have. The better way that would have been much more intelligent would be for me to have done all the work that I did do this weekend, planned it out in directives of what needed to be done to where I could actually collaborate with the two of them, let's say every other day. Although I knew exactly what needed to be done in totality, it would have been much smarter for me to break that into intervals so that I could have some consistency with review for the things that are being done so that it goes the right direction and it's very, very targeted. Okay, now that's the better way of actually managing something when there's a tremendous amount of things that have to be accomplished when you're working with others, especially. Okay, now this is true for yourself as well, okay? So if you have a major planning day where you really lay a lot of things out, make sure that you're breaking it down into what you know you can accomplish in a particular day, okay? And always take in sequence all of the other things that you're trying to accomplish too. Many of you probably, like me, have projects or things that you're trying to do that suffer sometimes consistently because we know we need to do them, but then we've got so many things that we organized and planned for, or let's just call it plan B, this other project or this other program, this other sales plan that we have. And then we suddenly start ignoring the sequence of the other things that we have to accomplish. You always have to take those things into consideration. So I'm not just talking about teamwork or developing operatives with people that you're working with and making sure that you're not feeding that to them too quickly. I'm talking about making sure you're doing that for yourself. Now, there's always a good measure to actually have a nice big planning session and put a lot of directives on the table, but really try to understand in your mind, what do you need to do first, second, third, fourth, fifth? What affects other decisions? So like, for example, we'll just use numbers. If I did directive 2, but on directive 4, I needed to collaborate with another person, that may change what I'm doing on directive 2. And so if I do the full directive on 2, but then I collaborate on step 4, and I gotta go back and change things, well, maybe it would have been better that I visited with the person in a little bit more of an open collaboration as opposed to having something finally finished for them to review so that I could bring that into sequence and get things done and not have to repeat myself so often. How many of you actually had things that you're working on and you change them, 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 and then when you're done, you're so proud of yourself because you're like, man, I really evolved that. This became a very evolved program. Well, that's okay. That happens to me a lot because sometimes things just have to be done quickly and they may even be immense to that measure. But the reality is, if you think about your directives and you say, I'll fire these in sequence, what really needs to come first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and the things that I'm doing. Let's break it down to something simpler. So let's move out of the corporate perspective and look more at the salesperson's perspective. Let's say that you join the Beto Paredes family of companies as a sales rep, and there's a lot of training that you have to go through before you're officially vetted to get out in the field. Well, it's in that particular perspective, it would be tempting to simply just break through every single thing on all the different training, maybe train the entire thing in a weekend. Right now, that's not necessarily a bad idea if you really set the time aside to do it right, but you also might want to take a little bit more relative view of what am I going to sell first? What do I think I'm going to sell first? Let me go review all of the different opportunities back here. And in our business model, we actually expect all our reps to train on everything, but it's better to look at the things that you're planning to sell first. I'll tell you why. If you train on things that you know you're going to be excited about selling, well, you're going to get a lot of your first fresh ideas about how you're going to get the field based off of that sales track. Well, you're also going to garner ideas off of that same initial sales track while you're going through the other trainings, getting other ideas. In our back office, we've got the CEOs and senior vice presidents of sales of some of the most successful companies in the country that are doing our training. And so in sequence, firing my directives, if I was to train in my own program, I would most definitely train on the programs that I felt most close to actually wanting to get into my sales track first, so that as I go through the rest of the training, I might come back and annotate certain things from that first training and be like, man, I really like that perspective. That would actually work really well with this first program that I know I'm going to get out there and sell, right? And so you always want to figure out what you want to do in your directives and fire things in sequence, okay? It takes a little bit more organization than just going at things chaotically, right? You kind of get this burst of energy a lot of times. I'm going to get a lot of things done today. Take one breath and finalize that statement with, and I'm going to do it in the best possible sequence I can imagine right now. Right? So just kind of add that in to the things that you're looking to accomplish, because it is very important, as I said in my first statement, that you take as many steps every day as possible. Do not waste time. Okay? You should. I tell people this in business and in sales and everything else. You don't want to sprint. Okay? Sometimes we're forced. I was forced to sprint this weekend. Okay? You don't want to sprint. You don't want to walk. You want to jog. Okay? You want to have a nice, clean jog going. You got to get things done, nice and clean. Not moving too fast that I can't really absorb my environment and really make sure that what I'm doing is, number one, in sequence, right, intelligently, and that I can actually lay these things out. So if you focus a little bit more energy on firing your directives in sequence and just kind of keep that in mind, it's a sensibility, it's a state of activity. Okay, we talk a lot about that even in the DNA of Success, one of the programs I'm a mentor in. And it's important to understand that this is a state. Okay, yes, it's an activity. You're going to sit down and sequentially figure out what may be most valuable to start first and whatever it is that you're trying to accomplish. But it's a state that you put yourself in where, as you review everything you're doing, it's constantly being measured out by the sequential reality of what you're trying to accomplish today, tomorrow, the next day, okay? So there's a high valuation in having that just part of your state, part of the way you observe and you pull information in from your environment, right? So it's not just an activity. You don't want to look at it like you're going to sit down and draw a picture. It's more, you know, in this state that I'm in, as I review the things that I've got to accomplish and the things that I'm going to do today, people I'm going to talk to, I need to kind of understand a little bit more about my directives. So just a little bit more on that philosophy when it comes to communications. Okay, if we never had to talk to anybody, and we never had to make that sales call, if we never had to talk to the other partner in the JV, if we didn't have to do those things, man, this would be a very easy process. Okay, sit down on the first of the day, write out all our objectives. You know, sometimes I'm very jealous of my software developers because that's exactly how their work works, right? But when you're dealing with communications and other people that you're in constant communication with during the day, they're going to change your directives. They're going to have their own opinions. They're going to want to have things done in their own particular sequence. So that means there has to be some kind of fusion between the way your directives have been laid out by yourself and the desires and the conclusions of others. And not only that, but you've got to have a strong sense of your directives and what you're firing in sequence so that you can defend the position that you're in if you're in communication with somebody and their directives are too far off from the things that you're trying to accomplish, so you can communicate well with that person and come to some fusion of ideas that is going to allow them to obtain the things they need, or even for you to say, I very much want to apologize right now, that is going to have to wait. Okay, you've got to be prepared to have that voice and that consideration. Now, what's very cool, okay, about this philosophy, especially if you're working in partnerships and people that have other businesses that they're operating that you're potentially doing JVs with or whatever it might be, is that when as they talk to you more often, as they communicate with you more, they're going to pick that up. It's almost like a contact association here. They're going to pick up that you do that, right? So you don't have to jump the gun and just be like, listen, I have to do things in sequence and you better obey, all right? What it is, it comes down to is you foster that into your communication so that they actually have that sensibility, or they get into that state with you. Now you're talking with a JV partner and they're like, well, I know Beto needs to do things in order. You know, every time I talk to him, you know, he's very polite, but you know, he's got this sequence of philosophy, this way he operates that I need to get in tandem with, because honestly, it's a higher perspective. When you're operating in a higher philosophy with the way you operate in business, people pick it up. Okay, it rubs off on them, I guess you could say. And so, if you've got a strong sensibility in your state of firing directives in sequence and being willing to be flexible to where you can manage and maneuver those directives, you're going to get a heck of a lot more accomplished. You're not going to do things 10, 15, 20 times. You might reduce that down to 2 or 3 times. Evolution is impossible to completely delete from the things that you're doing. Almost every communication I have during the day makes micro adjustments to the things that I'm trying to accomplish, because that's simply what communication is for. It's for the opportunity to take another intelligence and fuse that philosophy around how you're operating. And for example, if you are a sales manager and you have salesmen or salespeople, and you've got a certain idea about how John, who's got 20 years in sales and just joined your group, is going to be able to operate, then you have a conversation with John. And there's just minor discoveries that you have from what you prospectively thought it would work like with John and what's actually going to work with John. And so you've got to kind of keep that flexible as far as that goes. But don't let that flexibility completely loosen up and take you out of keeping in that state of firing things in sequence and keeping things appropriately built. All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining me this morning. Again, these morning mindsets are 10, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, sometimes I've gone as long as 30 because I just keep talking. Very excited to have you here. Thank you for joining me, and I will be back again tomorrow morning.